It's Thursday, the 26th of October. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel. And on the 20th of October, a Beechcraft Bonanza A-36 went down apparently after takeoff from a very small airport here in Northern California called Round Valley Airport, which killed two prominent folks from Utah, JetBlue pilot Vaughn Porter, 54, and his girlfriend, Jamie Redford Rust, 52. And the family is desperately looking for information as to what happened to these two in this crash. And because of the lack of data on these general aviation aircraft, we may never get the exact answer as to what happened, but the NTSB and the FAA are investigating, and we can share with you what little information is available at this time. And we'll be able to tell you what investigators will be looking at during their investigation. This crash hits very close to home for me, as I had just flown my whole family over to Shelter Cove a few days before this crash in Harvey, the 1959 Cessna 310. We spent the night there, and Shelter Cove, being located here on the coast with the coastal fog, has some very unique considerations when flying into or around this coastal area. First, starting with the Aviation Safety Network, this happened on Friday, the 20th of October. The aircraft was November 8248K, a 1991 A-36 Bonanza, 2 fatalities. A Beechcraft A-36 Bonanza crashed immediately after takeoff from Round Valley Airport, Covelo, California. The aircraft was destroyed by fire. This area of Northern California is very remote and sparsely populated. The only news of this event comes from a blog from the Red-Headed Black Belt, who covers these airplane crashes in this area. A plane crashed while taking off from Covelo Airport this evening, igniting a fire soon after. Scanner traffic began around 6:05 p.m., and that's right around sunset, and indicated that multiple 911 calls had been regarding a plane crashing into a hillside near the 21,900 block of Airport Road. And if we go to the Google map, that address puts the crash site somewhere just west of the Round Valley Airport, located right here at about the 1,400-foot elevation. The Round Valley Airport, where there is fuel available, is surrounded by higher terrain, especially to the west. And this terrain rises very quickly to 2,000 feet and then up to 4,000 feet, not far from the airport. Here's a picture of the accident aircraft, A-248K, an A-36 Bonanza with long-range fuel tanks. He's got the tip tanks out here and main tanks here in the wing, and is very nicely equipped for IFR flight, according to this picture from aircraft.com of an undisclosed date. If we go to flightaware.com for A-248K on Friday, 20 October, it shows the aircraft departing Heber Valley Airport about 1:35 in the afternoon, Mountain Daylight Time, and dropping off of the radar at 5:50 Mountain Daylight Time. Over 4.5 hours of flying time. And if we look closer at the route, it appears that they got all the way over here, flew direct nonstop all the way over here to Shelter Cove, took a look at the conditions at Shelter Cove, and turned around and descended to about 3,000 feet to divert to a nearby airport. The reason this data drops off is because of the remoteness and the mountainous terrain here. There are simply not enough stations to be able to receive NTSB data. If we go to Zoom Earth for 20 October, about 3 in the afternoon local California time, we can see a nice clear VFR flight across the state of Nevada, over the Sierras into California. But once you get over here to the coast, this is the classic bank of fog that persists along the coast of California. These clouds are higher level clouds here. And as the day progresses, see, Shelter Cove, by the way, is going to be located right in here. Here's the Shelter Cove Airport next to Garberville. Round Valley Airport is located back down here, just outside the edge of the fog. 4 in the afternoon, 5:50. So sunset, well, sunset should actually be about 6:15 or so on the 20th of October for this area. Round Valley Airport is just located 40 nautical miles to the east-southeast of Shelter Cove. You got to climb back over these 4,400-foot mountains in order to descend into Round Valley Airport, 1,400-foot elevation, where there is fuel, some of the cheapest fuel in Northern California, located right here. Garberville is a good alternate airport, but it's likely that Garberville, too, was fogged in at the time. So one of the clues that may help investigators is looking at the fuel receipts. Was the pilot able to get fuel here at Round Valley Airport? How much fuel did he take on board? But the big question investigators are going to have is, why did the pilot elect to take off to the west into rising terrain when the common local practice is to depart to the east over the valley and then climb over the valley in a circle until you are high enough to safely cross the terrain? As you proceed further to the east, you've got to cross terrain that approaches 7,500 feet or 8,000 feet. As we come back down here on Google Maps and take a look at the nearby the airport here, there's the windsock. The prevailing winds are typically out of the west, but this is classic mountain flying 101. Oftentimes you are forced to take off in a tailwind situation in order to avoid terrain, because here is the rapidly rising terrain to the west of the airport that this pilot elected to take off into, when instead it's a better option to choose the tailwind takeoff. You've got a lot more clear area before you reach the rising terrain, and you can climb in a circular pattern out of this valley. So what we're looking at here is stacking the odds against you in aeronautical decision making. You've flown a long flight from Heber, Utah. Don't know how tight the fuel is, but you have to divert from your original destination to find a place that's clear enough to land and has fuel. Now it's dark. You're single engine at night in the mountains in unfamiliar terrain. You're just stacking too many odds up against you. But investigators will not be approaching this accident from this viewpoint. They're going to be leaving their minds open. They'll be looking at everything. They'll be looking first at the aircraft itself and seeing what they can determine from the aircraft. Will they be able to determine, was there any problem with the engine on takeoff? Again, it's going to be very hard to determine that data. Was there any problem with the flight controls on takeoff? Was there any ear witness reports or eyewitness to reports to the takeoff to tell us what the engine sounded like? And what was the weather like at the time of the accident? Was there some of that fog beginning to come down over these hills, or some other clouds or obscurations that could have been affecting the departure path on this flight? Another factor investigators will be looking at is taking off into the rising terrain to the west during sunset makes it very hard to even see the terrain if the sun is still up just over the ridge, possibly casting shadows over rising terrain that are very close to you. Looking at the remains of the wreckage itself, investigators may be able to determine, depending on how much is left of the aircraft, does this appear to be a CFIT or controlled flight into terrain accident, or was this a loss of control, some sort of a stall spin in an effort to avoid the terrain, or again, was this some sort of engine failure after takeoff? This is a classic time when the best part of aeronautical decision making may be this safety device right here, a credit card, and just call it a day and stay where you're at. But at Round Valley, there's very little facilities there, and you would be motivated to move on to some place where you could more easily spend the night. So a couple of tips that I've learned over the years of flying in the coastal areas. The fog always drives me nuts on the coast here. That's why I don't get there as often as I would like to. Here we are coming into Shelter Cove, and there's the bank of fog just south of there impacting the coastline, but it's clear up at Shelter Cove. Here we are bending the corner, coming over the high terrain and starting a long, slow descent along the coastline here. But off in the distance is that huge fog bank, and you know that huge fog bank can roll in on you at any time. In our case, we spent the night and it rolled in hard the next morning, and you got to plan on spending the afternoon until the fog clears off enough to depart VFR out of there, as there is no instrument departure out of Shelter Cove. So what I do to plan to fly to Shelter Cove is, first, there's no fuel at Shelter Cove, so I plan, since I'm only coming out of Grass Valley, Nevada County Airport, an hour away in this airplane, I always have enough fuel to divert all the way back to home. The coast could be fogged in, and sometimes over the Sacramento Valley there can be fog and obscuration there once it's rained. October is usually about the best month to get into Shelter Cove. That's the days with the most sunshine and the least amount of fog. But I've always planned to have enough fuel to go all the way back home and still have plenty of reserve fuel. Another tip flying into any of these coastal airports is I won't even bother to go there unless I know the weather as a nice high pressure area located overhead, hopefully with some northerly winds, creating an offshore breeze, getting that fog away from the coast, and that it's going to stay that way for some time. Here we go back a few days previous, and you can begin to see where there's less fog on the coast. But it's very hard and unpredictable, or it's hard to predict when and where that fog's going to be. So on the day of the flight to Shelter Cove or anywhere on the coast, I'll check Zoom Earth and I'll scroll through the last couple of hours and get a feel for what's the fog doing out there. Then I'll go look at the webcams. Look at the Shelter Cove live webcams and see exactly where the fog is, where's the bank of fog at this current time. And then you'll be calling to make accommodations. There's some great accommodations right here off of the runway. Call there, or call the restaurant, or call the brewery right next door and have them look out the window. Hey, what's the weather doing there? Is it foggy now? And at what time did the fog burn off this morning? Get some local weather. Sadly, Jamie did post a short video on Instagram of the accident flight long before the accident and was able to get it posted going to Shelter Cove from Heber Valley. She showed some pictures of Shelter Cove, but these are not from the flight itself. This is the destination they hope to make. But of course, when they got there, it was fogged in, so they had to divert. She shows the takeoff roll of the A-36 Bonanza. A couple points here. The A-36 is a rather heavy model of Bonanza. Here at Heber Valley at a much higher elevation, it does take a considerable long takeoff roll with the two of them and the fuel on board to make this flight. I would recommend, instead of filming during takeoff, I would have whoever is sitting in the right seat, train them to be a part of the crew, and instead of filming, have them looking at engine gauges and calling out air speeds and any anomalies with the engine gauges. Just help back you up during the takeoff roll instead of filming. A couple other stills show the good, clear VFR conditions across the state of Nevada and Utah on their way over towards Shelter Cove. So she probably got that uploaded somewhere during the flight. Which brings up another point that I've had to pay particular attention to a lot more lately, is putting the phone in airplane mode. At work, they are death on this distraction in the cockpit at the airlines. But I'm finding in general aviation, I need to do the same thing, as my phone is constantly blowing up right when I get to the airport, when I want to start paying attention to flying. So nowadays, I'm putting my phone on airplane mode as I roll through the gate at the airport, just to turn it off and turn that distraction off. I see so many of us nowadays getting distracted during pre-flight operations that is just simply just a distraction. We got to be 110% focused on the mission at hand and turn those cell phones off. If you're going to film during flying, use fixed cameras instead of handheld cameras. So a long flight to a destination that's fogged in, requiring a divert to a small mountain airport surrounded by high terrain with a tight fuel situation, and then putting yourself in a situation where it is now dark at night in the mountains, single engine aircraft, unfamiliar airport with higher surrounding terrain is just too many, stacking the odds too far against you. We may never know exactly what caused this crash, but there's a lot to potentially learn from here. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. There is a GoFundMe page for the families, the rather large families affected by the devastating loss of this crash. Thank you so much for your support. See you here.